afternoon. We're here at the NFDA Convention 2016 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I'm here with Dr. Edith Churchman, my dear friend from many moons ago, who actually gave me my first opportunity to start in the funeral business altogether with printing my first program. So she definitely has a very special place in my heart. But Dr. Edith Churchman of the James E. Churchman Jr. Funeral Home, I was able to track her down. But as I mentioned before, we want to make some informational videos that will provide you information in regards to the whole funeral process. You know, when I got started, when my mom had passed in 2000, we really had no idea what to expect with the funeral. Even my father, who was you know, the one that was kind of in charge of everything, but as a family, it was the first time we were ever faced with this, you know, this situation or this event that was now happening in our lives. So there's a lot of people that go through that. They don't know what exactly to do. And I've asked the question to other funeral directors, but I definitely want to hear your response as well too. You know, what should a family do once they find out that a loved one has passed? What should be the steps that they should take? They get a call from the doctor, they get a call from the hospital, you know, or the nursing home, whatever. Your loved one has gone. What should they be? What should they do?
I think that the first thing the family should do is gather together to make sure that everybody's on the same page about using the same funeral home. Then they should also discuss what their loved one wanted in a service, so that when you go to the funeral home, you're presenting a united front and you know what it is that you want to do. So in other words, are you looking for a funeral? Are you looking for a viewing? Are you looking for cremation and entombment, a burial? That's helpful to know. And gather all the vital statistics, make the phone call to the funeral home, set up an appointment with them, and come in and talk to your funeral service professional. Okay,
and we're going to kind of just talk very real because of the relationship that we have, but you had mentioned about coming with a united front. So I can imagine that this time that the loved one has died is a very tense, emotional, stressful time for most families, and there can be a lot of dissension.
Yes.
And you have experienced some of that in your...
Yes, I have. I have experienced dissension in all of its forms.
Yeah.
And it's not nice. It's just not nice.
Yeah. Everyone is on edge in a way, right?
It's not nice for the funeral home, and it certainly is not nice for the family. And I think that at this time, the person who has died should be the centerpiece and should be the heart of our concern. We shouldn't be squabbling over who gets the china and who gets the silverware and who's going to ride in the limousine. That's kind of nonsensical to me.
At this point. But unfortunately, like I said, the emotions are so high during this time that does happen quite often,
Absolutely,
right?
it does happen.
So it's best to be prepared. We spoke before about pre-planning and pre-need. That helps in a way to...
I think that if you go through the process of pre-planning, of making pre-arrangements for your funeral, whether or not those arrangements are pre-funded, it is a record of what you want and how you want it done. Okay. And that's invaluable to a family.
Okay. Now let me ask you just some situations that come up. So let's say someone does make a pre-arrangement for their own service, right? And then they do go on and pass. Does the family, are they bound to stick with those pre-arrangements that were made?
The pre-arrangements are not carved in stone in small details. So the family, if the person who made the pre-arrangements asked for 10 death certificates, but now the family wants 15, that's a small thing.
Yeah.
If the person who pre-planned wanted 2 limousines, but now the family decides they only want 1, that's a small detail. However, if the person who pre-planned wanted to be buried and now the family comes in and says they want to be cremated, that's a red flag for me, and that's a situation that I would really have to, you know, argue with them.
Yeah. About. Well, I mean, is there any real legal...
Yes, there is a legal remedy.
Okay.
So if someone comes to me and says that they want to be buried and they want to be buried in this specific plot at this cemetery, and then another family member comes in and says, well, no, we want her cremated and that's going to be less and then we want the money back, then that sends up a red flag. So yes, I mean, I could go to court for that.
Okay, all right. So that's good to know if someone does pre-plan their funeral, that for the most part it's going to be held to for the major details of it.
Right.
You know, the small things. Okay, so what are the other benefits of doing the pre-planning of a funeral?
Pre-planning, put your wishes down on paper. You'd be very surprised that when I ask people, what was your grandmother's maiden name? People have to search. I have to call Uncle Willie. I have to call Aunt Grace to find out what that was. What kind of work did your loved one do? Well, I think they worked in Jersey City someplace, but I'm not really sure where they worked. So you yourself have that information. You know your own social security number. You know where you were born. You know your parents' names. You know what type of work you did. And so it eliminates people having to search around to find information that you know. You also know what you want done with your earthly remains. So say so. Put it down. And then you also know where your important paperwork is. So if you pre-plan what you're going to use an insurance policy, I'm going to take down the information about that policy so it's accessible at the time of death.
Okay. Now I know we've spoken before about the financial benefits of pre-planning and making pre-arrangements as well. Go into that just a little bit of what are the benefits of doing it financially?
Most times when people come to me to pre-plan and prepay, it's because someone is going on to Medicaid. And so the family has to go through what's known as a spend down process. So if you're going on Medicaid, you can only have $2,000 in assets for a single person. So if you had $30,000 in the bank, if you don't pre-plan your services and you want to rely on Medicaid, which is a very slim amount of money that would be available for your funeral, then all the money that you've worked so hard for that's in your bank account is going to pay the nursing home little by little by little. And so $30,000 is less than a 3-month stay at a nursing home. So if you spend down, then we can include everything that would make up your funeral service, almost everything.
So now, with all the benefits that we spoke about with pre-need and pre-planning, which are the same, as you kind of just throwing the words together, what are some of the reasons why people don't do them?
Superstition, that if I come to see you, if I step foot in the funeral home and pre-plan, I probably might die tomorrow. Reluctance, oh, it's something I was going to get to. You know, maybe it's kind of like, you know, having a mammogram or having a rectal exam. It's something that you know you should do, but you just didn't get there yet.
Yeah, until it's too late. Then it's like you can't go back and do it. So, but then it saves a lot of stress from the family during that time.
Absolutely. Even though people come in, they're kind of sad to be doing this, and a lot of times during pre-arrangements, people do break down and cry, you know, family members. But it's so much simpler to call me and say, my uncle died, but I have pre-arrangements. And all I have to do is pull out the folder and say, when do you want to have the services? Because I have the rest of the information already.
Okay. Now also in regards to, you know, they made a pre-arrangement and they paid, let's say $10,000 towards their own funeral. What happens with that money? Can you give us, you know, how does that work with that?
What I use is the New Jersey Prepaid Funeral Trust Fund. And the money goes into a FDIC insured account. So your money is 100% safe. And one of the things that people ask me is what happens if my firm goes out of business? Well, your money is still there. What happens if I move out of state? Your money is still there. What happens if I want to change funeral homes in 10 years? Your money is still there. So your money can kind of travel with you wherever you go. If you go out of state, that out of state funeral home can access your funds. So the money is in an account. There's a mass account for the New Jersey Prepaid Funeral Trust Fund. Each individual funeral home has its own account, and then each consumer has their own account. And it's so refined that you can track your own interest rate.
Oh, okay. But then that interest is never yours. How does that work in regards to that?
If you have an irrevocable account, which means that you are 6 months from going on Medicaid, or you are already on Medicaid, whatever money is in that account cannot be accessed by the consumer. That's there until you pass. If you have a revocable account, which means that you're not on Medicaid, you can take money out of your account should the need arise, but you shouldn't really look at it as a bank account. Your money accrues interest, and in theory, the interest goes to offset any increases in prices that may happen.
Okay. So let's say they do it in 2016 for $10,000. In 2030, this person passes away. The funeral costs, of course, are going to go up by the time 2030. So how does that $10,000, how does that work in 2030? Do you still get the same services?
That's a great question.
Okay.
So some funeral homes do have what they call guaranteed items on the funeral bill. So if that $10,000 has grown to $12,000, but say that your service now is $15,000, what part of your service is guaranteed? Have I guaranteed my professional services? Have I guaranteed my livery? What part is guaranteed? I think that a lot of funeral homes will try to guarantee as much as they can. Also in the process of making pre-arrangements, if there's something, if you need to buy a grave, I would suggest that you go and buy the grave now. Don't wait until 10 years or 20 years from now to buy the grave, because you may not be able to get in that cemetery.
Yeah, so it's not even just a matter of price. Okay, so let me ask you a question. We spoke about pre-need already, but as far as the funeral services itself, what do you feel is the responsibility of the funeral professional for the family? What responsibility or obligation do they have to the family? What do you think is there?
My responsibility is to listen very, very carefully to what the family expresses that they want. My next responsibility is to determine how we're going to finance what you want. Do you have enough money? Is this a possibility for what you want to do? And then to work in concert with the family to meld what they want with what they have into what we're going to have.
Okay, so because sometimes it doesn't exactly match up what they're looking for versus what they want to spend or what they think they're going to spend. Is that accurate?
Yes. If I could give you an example, I had a lady whose mother had died some years ago, and her son died, and she wanted to bury the son with the mother, but there was no room in the grave, and she did not have enough money to purchase a new grave in the same cemetery. So as we were talking, I said to her, is cremation an option for you? Absolutely not. That's off the table. I said, okay. Because the reason that I ask you is, then you could put your son's ashes in the grave with your mother. And then she began to kind of warm up to the idea. And I'm not that I'm a proponent of cremation, but I am a proponent of making sense out of things for people. And in the end, she was able to put the cremated remains in the grave with her mom. We had a beautiful funeral service for her son. We had a viewing, we had a funeral. Then we had the interment of the ashes, the inurnment of the cremated remains at the cemetery. And she also was able to buy some smaller urns for family members and a beautiful piece of memorial glass as well.
Okay, that's wonderful. So you were able to listen to what she wanted, and you kind of rearranged what she was looking for, but you still satisfied everything that she wanted to accomplish.
Once she thought about it, and she wasn't in a hurry. She was making pre-arrangements. Her son was on life support, but yet and still it wasn't something that had to be done tomorrow. It was something that she had a few days to think about.
Okay. Now, you mentioned about cremation and so forth, and there's definitely, I think everybody kind of knows there's been a rise in cremations as opposed to regular burials. The reason for that, just you explain it, the reason for that?
I think that one of the reasons is a financial consideration for families. Also because cremation is becoming less exotic. More people are doing cremation. And so once you've had one person in your family cremated, it becomes easier to have a second or a third cremation. And also because consumers now 30 years ago, people didn't go to the crematory. They didn't know what to expect. And now people come in, and when we talk about cremation, and they say, oh, well, what crematory are you going to? Oh, yeah, I've been there before. I know what that's like.
Okay. So now, when you cremate or you go through cremation, do you lose all the options that you can have with a funeral service? Or?
Absolutely not. Because you can still have a viewing, you can still have a funeral, you can still go to the cemetery, but instead of going to the graveside, we're going into the chapel in the crematory. So you can have all of the elements. You can still have a minister, an organist, you can still have funeral programs, you can still have a beautiful casket, you can have a head panel for that casket, you can have a pillow for the family, you can have any type of memorial that you want. We're just ending the service with cremation rather than burial.
Okay, so that's good to know. So even though they can have a cremation, they can still have everything they want.
Every single thing.
But they're just taking away the burial in the ground with the cremation. So that drastically reduces the cost of the service.
It may affect the cost. So instead of buying a grave for $3,100, now you're paying $310 for a cremation. So that's a 90% reduction. But there are things that you can do with cremated remains. Cremation is not the end. So now we have to think about, do you want to purchase an urn? What are you going to do with those cremated remains? Are you going to buy a little space at the cemetery? Are you going to scatter them? Do you want to buy a degradable urn? Do you want to keep those cremated remains in your house? Some people spend thousands of dollars on an urn. So now you're going upward in price again. Do you want to buy multiple urns? So a lot of families buy several urns.
Yeah, actually we're at the convention and I've seen a couple booths. I think there's one right around there that they make beautiful artwork, but it's actually an urn. So you can have it on your mantle and someone can come and comment on how beautiful your artwork is, but actually it serves as an urn. So, yeah, so there's a lot of options that you can take with that as well too. So cremation, I like what you said before, cremation is not the end.